Good evening. Happy Resurrection Day. I hope you guys had a great day celebrating the resurrection of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Y'all know how I feel about that. So I had a good day. Sierra, did you have a good day and a good week?
Yeah, I had a great day. The week went by way too fast, unfortunately. It's Monday.
Yeah,
Back to
exactly.
the grind tomorrow. The weather here was terrible today, but I'll take it.
Exactly. Well, welcome to Better Together. We're another platform under the legends from the past and the future. And we have exciting topic today. Hope you guys enjoy as much as we have doing the research. So today we're going to talk about the things you think you know about communication, but you don't. So just want to, communication is one of those things that most people think they're good at. They often misunderstand at a deeper level. Some things that people assume. So we're going to talk about them today. Sierra.
Yes.
So what do you got for us today, Sierra?
Um, One thing that people don't, we think people know, but they don't, is just because you said something clearly does not mean that it was understood.
That's right.
So that's a huge problem with communicating. um I know there's a huge saying that's like, oh, I said what I said, meaning you shouldn't have to expand on it. Everyone should clearly understand what you're saying, and you don't have to add any extra detail or clarity, and that's someone else's responsibility for not understanding. So
Right.
that's one of the big things.
Right. Yeah, you can be 100% clear in your mind and still be misunderstood if and not understood, right? So
Hmm.
what about, yeah, they talk about it. The most important thing about that particular um, point is that communication is not about what you say, it's about what people hear, right?
Hmm. What
So,
people understand.
yes. So you have to make sure that you're saying, make sure that people are you're clear in what you're saying, and make sure that people are understanding. So sometimes you might have to say, repeat back what you heard, because many times you didn't hear what they thought you heard, right?
Yeah. Or ask questions, follow-up questions to ensure understanding. Because I know
Right.
we've all been in situations where you say something to someone and then their response has nothing to do with what you thought you said to them. So instead of just bypassing it, you could always just ask a follow-up question that pertained to what you're talking about to clarify in their mind that they didn't hear what you said.
Yeah, I had an example of that yesterday. Yesterday, I was at a restaurant and I was sitting to get my food, and some people were sitting across from me. They had gotten there before I got there, and the lady kept calling number 88. And so, just we're all looking around 88. She's like, 88, 88. She did that for about 5 minutes, about three different times. And finally, she came over to them and she said, "Hey, your food's ready." And I looked at the guy, and I just caught eye contact with him. And I said, "Were you 88?" He said, "No, I was in the Air Force." And I just
Like
laughed.
what?
And I thought, okay, they weren't listening to the number that they had for their food. And he certainly wasn't listening to what I said, because I was this close to him and he had no idea what I said.
And
Obviously, that's go ahead, Sierra.
And he ignored the context of the situation. Like, why would we be asking about that? We're in a
Yeah,
restaurant.
I didn't even know him. I didn't even know him. Can't read the room, right? He didn't read the room.
Nope.
Yeah. So anyway, I thought it was funny, but I didn't care enough about that particular situation to get clarity. And sometimes, right, you have to make a choice on whether that's something you want to go deeper
Yeah.
into. There might be some people who like, well, no, I said blah blah blah. Why? I'm never seeing
Hmm.
this person again. So you have to really do, when you start thinking about communication, is it real? Is it really necessary? That's another
Hmm.
question that you can ask, right?
Yeah.
I think again, when we're talking about clarity, the communication isn't complete until that person understands, right?
Yes.
So you
Yeah.
need to make sure that they understand. But this was an interesting fact that I got. listen to this. People's interpretations of things, of messages, this was good. They are through their own context, their stress level, their assumptions, and past experiences.
100%.
So you need to be really careful about understanding your audience, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we have to deal with that right now. Like, who is our audience right now? We don't know yet. We just started, and we're hoping that our audience is everybody, but it might not be, right? It might just be, old mothers like me or young daughters like you. It might be only women. It might be, who knows? It might be grandmothers. I don't know. But eventually we'll figure that out, right?
And the main thing about people are filtering through their past experiences and the assumptions they're making. We all need to just understand that, you may not fully understand people's past experiences. So miscommunications or misunderstandings are just bound to happen.
Yeah.
And that is what it is. Like you just don't know. So that's always something to consider when you're talking to someone.
Yeah. And once again, give people grace, right? Mm-hmm. Give them some grace. Come on. You want it.
Can.
Yeah. You want some grace. Give people some grace when you can.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah. So, Sierrah, did you want to say the next one?
Sure. So next big one is listening is not the same as hearing.
Yeah.
Those are two different things. Right. When you're having a conversation, you could very well believe that you're being an active listener when in fact you're just sitting there and just hearing words come at you and not taking it in and not preparing to be active in the conversation.
Sierrah, how about the times when we go to the restaurant? Every time. When we go to the restaurant, Sierrah, you want to share it or you want me to share it? When we go to the restaurant,
you can do it.
We go to the restaurants, right? And the server's coming around the table. And I hope that I do better than I did in the past. But in the past, when they come around, I'm looking at the menu or whatever. And whenever they would talk to me, I wouldn't even look up.
No.
And Sierrah would always kind of correct me and say, you're dismissing them. And I never felt like I was dismissing them. I felt like I was doing what I was supposed to be doing and they're doing what they're supposed to do. Then I realized that, you need to, I guess you need to acknowledge people.
Yes.
Make sure that you acknowledge them and make sure that you show them that you appreciate what they're doing. So
and engage. But a piece you're leaving out of this is that many times you'd respond to a question that they did not ask. They did not ask.
That's so true. That's true. Because I would already have my question answered, or they would say some things or something. And if we were for breakfast, they would tell me all the things that they had on the menu or whatever. And I said, do you have grapefruit juice? And people would look around like, where in the world did that come from? Or I may say something like, can you have it this way? And for what? It's like, where is this coming from? But anyway, that is kind of like a person that's, not locked in the conversation.
Or a good example is the waiter will ask you, is anyone at the table have any allergies? And then you could respond with something completely different. Oh, what's the dessert menu?
Right.
It's like, what? You never answered their question. So they're just walking away. They're like, okay, and just walk away.
That's so true. That is so true. Yes, that is so true. Because I'm not listening, because I want to say what I want to say, right? Yeah, it's kind of rude too, actually. So I'm sorry.
Don't apologize to me. I'm not the wait staff.
I'm confessing right now. I'm confessing right now, Sierrah. I'm confessing. I'm trying to repent, turn from my wicked ways, right?
True.
Okay. All right, let's continue. I digress. Let's see. Be a real listener. Let's talk about what being a real listener means, right? It's not preparing your response while you're talking, which is what I have a tendency to do. I think a lot of people have a tendency to do. People are like, you know what? They want to get in. So what we do in conversations, me and my girlfriends, we're like so excited. We're on a conversation and everything. And we're just like waiting for them to take a deep breath. And then we jump in. Right. So no, you don't just jump in when when somebody pauses. You need to take your time and make sure that they finish their thought, because you don't want to interrupt people's thoughts. One of the other things that annoys me about that is when I'm talking and people go, yeah, I know, yeah, sure. Well, that disrupts my thought process. So yes, you should acknowledge, that what the person is saying, but you do not have to say a verbal comment after every sentence they say. You can shake your head, give them a smile or something like that. But no, you don't have to say, yeah, No, it disrupts the conversation. So relax a little bit. And that's what I would say, not interrupting mentally or verbally. And then being curious instead of defensive, which also, like, when I say something, I don't need you jumping on board and say, yeah, I was and taking over the conversation. I'm guilty of that. That's a me too attitude, or a one up. Somebody says, oh, I went swimming today. And you say, oh yeah, I went swimming the other day, and taking over the conversation. So no, don't hijack people's conversations. Take your time and listen to what they have to say and wait for your turn, right?
Yes. And a lot of these are well-meaning. Like, people are doing these things and are not trying to be negative or ruin the conversation. A lot of times they're trying to make the conversation better. Like what you said about people thinking about what they're going to say before it's their turn to speak. A lot of that, I feel like, comes from just like a general insecurity, or wanting to make sure they don't ruin the conversation or it doesn't die, so they have all their like thoughts put together. So there's definitely a fine line between, like, hearing a little nugget from what someone said and gathering your thoughts prior to speaking, and being someone who's just like a blabbermouth and doesn't think before they say anything. So it's a fine line to weave, definitely.
That's a great point, Sierra. That's a really great point. And then we talk about most conversations fail because people are responding and not listening. Right? Because people want to say what they want to say as opposed to listening, right?
Yes. But I mean, that comes back to that thing about the fine line between, overthinking about what you're saying and then being like present in the conversation. So yeah, I'm not really sure how to fix that aspect of it. I mean, what do you think?
I think, well, I do. I think that, we just need to trust the people that we're talking to, right? When we trust the people that we're talking to, then we don't feel so stressed out about, what we're talking about. And so I think that just not being engaging, frivolously, like you're sitting around.
That's true.
I have a habit of that. I mean, any conversation I can jump in, but you don't just jump into conversations that, you don't have any connection with. I think that would help that, right?
Yes. I as soon as you said that, I was like, that's 100% it. Like, you don't need to pretend that you know something about every conversation that's happening. That's true. You can just comment and say, oh, that's interesting, never thought about that, and like ask for more information from the person that's talking, opposed to trying to just like add in words where they're not necessary. That's a good idea. That makes sense.
And also, don't feel the need to fill in every piece of silence. Sometimes you need the pause. Sometimes there needs to be silence. Give somebody a chance. You don't have to, like, I know I maybe even me, or I do know some people that they will not allow one moment of silence, right? You can appreciate that, right, Sierra? You're like, can you just give me a minute?
Because I love silence. That's
So
true. That's true friendship when you can sit in silence, I think.
that is absolutely true. I know, I agree with that. That is true friendship when you can sit in silence. It's easy when you have distractions and a lot of things going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I guess we can move on to the next one. Then we'll beat that one. Right.
Mm-hmm.
What about more information equals better communication? I think that's one, right? People think that if they give you more information, then we really are communicating, right? I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. I think that's yeah. I think that's
Yeah.
definitely a misconception.
That's a huge misconception because the goal of communicating is to get your point across. And if you throw out 40 different points and 30 different details, then it's almost impossible for, especially like a person who doesn't know you, to understand what your point was. So
Right.
it's definitely better to be concise and focus on what you're actually supposed to be telling them. Like, for example, if you sat there and you told 4 different stories at the same time and brought in like 3 different characters and 3 different endings, people would be so confused on what you said. Like, that's not that's not how a movie is structured. Like, we need to focus in.
No, that's good. That's true. No dumping facts, all the details, explanations. Too many explanations also makes understandings worse, especially, and then you start getting to a point where things are not even relevant,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I get that. I do get that. So we need to make sure that, we're filtering what we're saying to people and not just sharing information. Because I have, we were talking about this earlier today, talking about how people communicate. Like some people will give you play by play, every piece of information that they possibly can. And a lot of the information is irrelevant as to the understanding. And so what happens is the real information gets lost,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
In the shuffle of information. So if you
Yeah.
really have a point that you want to get across, you should really just kind of filter it and make sure that your point's getting across and you're not just, you know,
Yeah.
running your mouth,
I
right?
said running your mouth is a huge piece. Like example, it's like someone tells a story about how their dog ran away, and then they'll
Mhm.
add a section about, and I went to the gas station and there was this man and he got a Gatorade, and then they'll move on and then they'll be like, oh, then I drove and then I turned left and then something else, and they'd be like, and they'll finish the story and you'll be like, what did that piece have to do with the dog? It's
Right.
like, oh, nothing. It's like, where did that come from? What was that about?
Yeah, and it gets. I mean, I get annoyed. You know me. I get annoyed when people start telling me too much information that I'm not going to use. Like I'm like cut the
Yes.
chase, and I know people, sometimes think of that as being dismissive, but it's just like my mental Rolodex only has but so much space.
Yeah.
So I don't need people dumping their information into my mental Rolodex that I don't need. That's how I feel about that. So I just
Yes.
and I usually will say, okay, I move people on. Like, somebody asks me something, they'll ask me a question, I'll move them on to the next thing. I'm like, okay, so what do we do next? I don't let people just kind of roll around with all their, jibber jabber. I don't let people.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think that
Yeah.
yeah, more
But then the
information.
alternative is someone who doesn't give any detail. So,
Right.
like we were talking about earlier, everything's like there's kind of a middle ground that we should all strive for, because
Mhm.
there's nothing worse than someone's like, oh, I have this crazy story to tell you, and then they tell you like the most like bare bones version. You're like, wait, how did you get to Mount Kilimanjaro? Like, how did you meet that person? What? So then you're just sitting there like that. The story wasn't. That's not a good story. Not a good storyteller.
Right. So you're right. There's a balance on there. Too much information is not good, but you need enough information to make sure that people get a clear understanding of what you're trying to get across. Right.
Yeah.
And what about tone? What do you think about that part? What do you think about the tone? Because people get at me all the time about it. It was your tone, and I think
Yeah.
matter of fact, Armand, they talk about his tone. The tone. What do you mean by tone?
Yeah. Tone is like a huge thing. It's tone and then, body language, which I'm sure we're going to talk about soon. It's like the way you say things matters almost just as much as what you actually say, because the tone you have impacts how people's feelings
Mm,
about what you said. There's like your tone can make it sound more harsh or less harsh or like happy or sad. Like that's a huge component. So we all just definitely need to be mindful about giving information and making sure we're not um, having a tone that doesn't correspond with what we meant to say.
right.
Because of
Yeah.
course, if you're saying something, that's supposed to be serious, then you definitely do want to have like, more stern, serious tone, versus something more jovial with something that's serious and then people don't really know how to take it.
Absolutely. Absolutely on that. Just, I mean, when we start talking back about email text and like a Slack strip, it strips away all the facial expressions and the intent. So
Yeah.
neutral, so you just, you don't know. You really don't
Yeah.
know. So you can't hone in on what people are really saying.
And the emojis are supposed to like help fix that. Like you're supposed to be like, oh, if you add this emoji, you can tell that I'm happy when I'm saying it. You add
Mhm.
this, you can tell that I'm sad. But even those, like we've like repurposed every emoji, so it's like something that's, I mean, at least for someone my age, the super smiley emoji means
Mhm.
like you're in pain or like it's like sarcastic. So you can't truly know even with those.
Right, right, right.
Mhm.
Or no, it says silence and brevity or efficiency can easily sound like anger or dismissal.
Mhm.
People are.
Something that's brought up a lot with me is like I use periods at the ends of all my texts. All texts and emails, I use periods. Like it's like have a great day. Period. People think that's harsh and aggressive, apparently. So there's a lot of. I'm not going to stop doing it, but even just that slight change in punctuation, it impacts like the tone of your words.
Or what about if you make a mistake and write in all caps
Oh, all caps. That's those are fighting words. That's you're screaming. That's what that means.
and an exclamation point, right?
Yeah, there's no accident there. That person is after you. That's what I know.
Oh no, that's not true. I mean, you just kind of want it. You're just kind of saying, you put some emphasis on it. That's
What
all.
kind of what do you mean by emphasis?
Yeah, you're just letting them know, hey,
A whole
you know,
sentence?
I don't know. I just don't feel like it's as sharp as people make it out to be just because you had
See?
a exclamation point. Or
Mm-hmm.
people take it the wrong way.
Yeah.
Like I might wow if I say wow and I put an exclamation point, I do it every time. Is it wow or is it wow?
No, the exclamation point I feel like is good. People perceive it as good. It's the all caps that's the problem.
Ah,
And see, this
right.
is how it's all just like nebulous, and none of us are really certain. So a
It
lot
just
of chaos can come from this.
depends on where it's coming from. Depends on how I feel today. Like
Yes.
today, you might say something to me, and I'm like, oh, okay, but I'm in a bad mood today, and you say, and I see an exclamation point or something. I'm like, what do you mean? She said,
Mm-hmm.
she said, I feel like it depends on the people. It does
A
depend
hundred
on the.
percent.
I think it does depend on the people. That's why you got to know your audience. Once again, you got to know who you're talking
Yeah.
to,
Who
and
are you
that's gonna
speaking
make
to?
the difference, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
that goes into that's nonverbal communication. Um,
Yeah.
and it's always speaking. You're
Mm-hmm.
always saying something. Rather
You're
you can
always.
you can talk, you can be talking, you can be doing sign language, you can be, crossing your arms. I mean, you can be avoiding eye contact, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can be sighing. I mean, my facial expressions. I'm sorry, people. I'll have some facial expressions when I'm not saying anything, and people are always trying to read it. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you're like sometimes your sign can contradict everything. One of the things that I think that people need to know about the nonverbal is like when you're in a group setting and somebody's saying something that may or may not be, let's say, shady, or may be derogatory or something like that. People are looking for confirmation, and what they do is they'll look around the room to see who will connect and give them the eye contact to sign on with it. And so you have to be real careful about that, because people will assume that you're on board with whatever they're saying a lot of times when you're not. And so that goes into assumptions, right? People will assume so many things. There's this book called The Four Agreements, and one of the four agreements is make no assumptions. Make no assumptions. Don't assume anything. And when you do that, you're going to have a better life. There's 3 other agreements with it, but that one in particular is really important, because a lot of times we think we know what people are going through. We think we know what people want. We think we know all these things, but it's not true. Right?
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. And then, of course, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. Back to the nonverbal communication. It's similar to something that we were talking about earlier, where a lot of these things are things we're doing subconsciously. Like, we don't have intent behind it. There are people who are avoiding eye contact because they have social anxiety. They're just not used to having eye contact with people. There's people who are crossing their arms or crossing their legs, or not smiling, not because they want to be negative. And there's people who are smiling and have like great body posture and whatnot, and they have ill intent. So it's a lot of these things are not things you're doing on purpose to impact how you're communicating, but they all do. And the more you can like take control of how you're positioning yourself and your eye contact and your body language, the better you'll be able to like impact how people are perceiving you.
Yeah, no, it's true. I think one of the things that I talk about a lot is your expectations. Unspoken expectations are one of the biggest causes of conflict, right? Because people have their expectations of what they want from you or what they're expecting from you. Things like, if we're in a relationship, then I'm going to assume that you know how I feel about things. And she said, and that's why we have to ask the right questions. Absolutely. No question is a bad question. I would say ask more questions as opposed to less questions. You never can go wrong with asking another question. But here we go. We need to make sure that people understand where we're coming from on it, because sometimes when we question, people get on defense, don't they?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
When do they start? Why are you questioning me?
They feel interrogated. They feel like you are assuming that they're being negative, or they don't know what they're talking about. So 100%. Happens all the time.
Right. So we have to, I don't know. I think that we have on that side, we just have to try to make people feel comfortable and help people understand that we're trying to understand. Right.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
That's a big piece. Trying to build that camaraderie, that human connection, so that when you do ask questions, you're understood and they know what you're doing, opposed to them thinking you're interrogating them.
Well, that's true. It goes back to that transparency and communication, being transparent, because when you're transparent and people know that you don't have any ill will, or that you're being honest, and you have developed that trust with them, then people are more likely to entertain, your comments and your questions, right? So, yeah. She said, depends on how we ask the question. If we say something made me feel a certain way, they can go on defense. Absolutely. That's exactly right. I mean, and you know what? It depends on how you ask the question, but you know what? It also depends on where that person is, where that person is in their life. Like I said, if I worked all day, I worked 12 hours today, and you're going to be asking me why I'm doing something, I ain't trying to hear that.
No.
I'm not trying to hear that. So you need to make sure that, once again, know your audience, right? You need to know where they're coming from. I mean, somebody could have been, I think, who was that saying? Somebody could have just, had a terrible conversation. Somebody could have had a terrible thing that happened to them. And then you trigger something. So you also have to make sure that when you do ask those questions, that if people come back at you, that, you take a pause. That's my thing. That's one of my key techniques in making sure that I don't overreact is taking a pause. And the way I do breathing exercises, but I do them, they're mine. So you probably wouldn't know that I'm doing it, but yeah, take a pause. Just take a pause and make sure that, you give yourself a chance to level out before you start responding to stuff, right? So what else we got? I think we got this is good too. Another assumption: good communicators are good talkers. Is that a thing? Is that
no?
That's what we think. We think that because people can run their mouth, that they are good communicators.
A lot of people at high levels of our society are very good talkers and terrible communicators.
Don't we know, right?
Yeah, exactly. Being a good talker gets you like very far. It's a good skill to be a talker. It requires a little effort. A lot of it's just natural, but you get very far in a lot of careers doing that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. She said, pause. Absolutely. My book is all about this. Yeah, I see you. Put your book up there. That's right. Strong communicators. One of their skills is they're probably good listeners.
Yeah. So, empathetic, possibly.
Possibly.
Yeah, possibly empathetic. Talkers are good at just running their mouth.
Right. Well, a lot of people just, got the gift of gab. I mean, I got the gift of gab, actually. I got it from my dad. But just because you have the gift of gab and you can keep conversation going, it doesn't mean that you're a great communicator, because communication is not something, you're not just a born communicator.
No.
It really requires intention.
Yes.
One of the other things that is important when we're talking about things is timing. Timing matters as much as the content, right? And I was saying earlier about if you say something to me after I've, been through something, somebody else has already said something, even the right message delivered at the wrong time can fail. We've seen that. I experience that sometimes, like when you go to the store and your cashier, you go in there and sometimes they're like, they got their funny look on their face. And they're like, you can just tell that they're not having a good day. And so what I usually try to do, and I would say, how's your day going today? And then they'll say something like, and I'll say, well, it's gonna get better, or something like that. I try to say something nice, even if they don't respond to me, cheerful or whatever, but I still try to push it a little bit to encourage them, because you don't know who that last person was that they dealt with. You really don't.
Yeah.
So you have to make sure, once again, I mean, I'm going to always be saying this, that you have to give people grace, and you have to make sure that, you also are listening, not to what they're saying, but what are they saying to you without the words.
Yeah. And consider what they need from you in that moment. Something I've seen a lot, and something I used to do, is someone will bring up something negative that's happening, and your immediate goal is to try to tell them how they could have not gotten in that situation, or how, like, I was there and that didn't happen to me, so you could have done this differently. And it's like, well, what they needed in that moment was just some compassion and understanding. They weren't coming to you to try to get a 1-2 step on how you can avoid something happening. So I think trying to understand, like, why are they having this conversation with you? What are they coming to you for? I think, and then there could be another time where you could, tell them about your list of ways for that not to happen. But in that specific moment, that's not what they're asking for.
Oh, that's so good, Sierra. Me and you have had conversations like that. You would call
Yeah.
me and say something. I would be like, well, why didn't you do blah, 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 blah. She would be like, I
Yeah.
don't want to hear that right now.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear that right now. So you're absolutely right. You need to know when people come to you, you need to find out what they need at that particular moment. What do they need right now from me? Not not just what am I going to give them? Because a lot of times that's another thing about listening. You're prepared to give them something.
Yes.
And that's not what they necessarily need right now. Guess what? That's a fail.
Yes.
That's a failure in communication. Even though you gave them all this information, right? You didn't give them what they needed.
No. And it makes things like black and white instead of like the gray area that most situations are in. It's like, well, you could have just done this. Oh, well, this could have just happened. And it's like, well, you weren't there. Like, of course, like hindsight, you could do all these things and whatever, but that's just not how most situations are.
Yeah, that's a whole nother show when we talk about, when people give you information, they're only giving you a linear tunnel vision of the story. They're not giving you the whole story. So even if you give them good counsel, you can't possibly give them the best counsel because you don't have the whole story. No. So you need to remember that. So when we're trying to give people advice, you need to make sure that you understand that this information that I'm giving you is only based on what you're telling me. Because a lot of times people will come back and say, well, such and such said this and they said that. And then when that person gets the other information, they're like, well, I didn't have all that information.
Yes.
So be very careful about giving people advice, especially when other people are involved in it, because you only have the piece that they gave you.
Yes.
So, yeah. I think that's pretty good on that. This is good. This is another good one right here. And this is a misconception that trying to resolve conflict, trying to resolve conflict when someone is tired, stressed, or emotional, can be a fail, right?
Yes.
It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. If people are all emotional, tired, just know that
drunk.
Drunk, exactly.
Don't try to do conflict resolution with someone who's drunk, high, tired,
trying to reason with somebody that's tired, right?
Yeah.
Trying to reason with somebody that's under the influence. You can't reason with these people.
It's like trying to reason with a toddler. Like there's no point. Like how dumb would you think? It's like, oh man, they should understand me. It's like, no, they're in toddler mode. They're not going to understand.
Yeah.
And it could just escalate. It just makes things worse, honestly. It's best to just table it and talk about it when people are clear-headed, honestly.
No, it's absolutely true. Many times they want to remember it, and many times they will resent it. We go back to that getting on defense, right? They're going to resent you trying to tell them what to do.
Yeah. And although
look, let me say this. I.e. Tiger Woods, somebody telling him that the gift, you're not driving today.
Good.
I had to throw that in there because daggone well, somebody told that boy that he didn't need to be driving.
Oh my goodness.
And he was on defense.
Yeah,
drinking, and he was like, I know what I'm doing. I got this.
Yep.
So yeah, that's a clear example right there of trying to reason with somebody who is under the influence. Because don't we say that all the time? Matter of fact, I'm just gonna go off on it. How many times do we say, why didn't somebody stop them? Why didn't somebody stop them from doing it? You think nobody tried?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Several people did.
Yeah.
But you can't reason with people.
Matter of fact, I was just listening to a guy that was he was in prison, and he said that they were talking about whatever crime he committed or whatever. And he started, this is probably like 20 years later. And he said there were two instances where people had talked to him and asked him to do something, and he rejected the two. And then finally he went ahead on that third thing, and that got him in that, and it was bad. So many times, people are talking to us, people are helping us, and we're rejecting them.
Yes.
We're rejecting them. So we need to think about, people in your life who you care about or who care about you. And just know if somebody cares about you, they're going to give you, hopefully they're giving you information that's going to be better for you or be good for you.
Right? Yeah. And if you're the person who's trying to communicate to help someone out, your job is not to make sure they do your advice. All you can do is just, try to help them out and communicate the best you can. And then whatever they do on their end is really their responsibility.
I think I remember you had an instance in particular with a friend, and you tried and tried and tried, and then before you know it, they were spiraling at that time, and then they ended up in this bad place. Mm-hmm. And so you did. I mean, some of the things that you did, they rejected it.
Oh yeah. It's the timing, and unfortunately, they just sometimes people are not prepared for good advice or the truth, and you just have to accept that.
Yeah,
and that's just what it is.
That's true. I mean, I had a friendship break up because I was giving them, information, and I was giving them information based on what they were telling me. It's just one of those situations. And I was saying, this is blah, 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 blah. And then they were like, well, you're saying bad things, la, 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 la. And when it was all said and done, they came back and they were like, oh, I'm so sorry. I just wasn't prepared to hear it. And I get that. So a lot of times people are not going to be prepared to hear it. And you also have to be prepared that people are not going to always, accept the information that you're providing. Mm-hmm. And you're not going to kick your friends to the curb because they are not going to do it the way you want them to do it. Mm-hmm. Right? And you make sure of that. So yeah. And what about again, you're always communicating, even in silence. And remember, not responding, delaying, avoiding conversations is still sending a message. Yes. Right? And here's some of the things that silence is interpreted as. Sierrah, you want to do that?
1 second.
Silence
okay, yeah, this is something we kind of hinted at earlier, like disinterest, disrespect, you rejecting something, or even you agreeing with something. Mm-hmm. I know I am guilty of people thinking I'm disinterested all the time just because I'm not overly engaging with them or things like that. So that's 100% a thing.
Right. And just validation is not agreement, right? You're just let people know that you hear what they're saying. It doesn't mean that you agree with them. And people people confuse that. But validation means is I understand how you feel, not your right. Remember, right?
Yeah, validating someone's feelings.
Yeah, yes. And you know what? The key in relationships is conflict resolution. We want to resolve some things. We want to, give you what you need and get what we need at the same time. Here's another one. Sierrah, you want to take that one about clarity?
Let me see. About unclear communication.
Clarity requires courage, right? I'll take it. Clarity requires courage. Many people avoid being direct because guess what? They want to be nice, right?
Yes.
But unclear communication leads to what? Resentment, confusion, broken trust. Being clear is actually a form of respect. You know,
Yes.
if you were trying, like, I always feel like that. I feel like when I'm trying to get clarity from you and I want to be clear, it's because I want the conversation to be successful. I want you to be successful. That's what I always feel like. People don't always feel that way. They feel like, you're questioning them, demeaning them, all those things. But yeah, no, clarity, you can't ask, you cannot ask a bad question. You really can't. That's
Yeah.
why people don't.
Most people are like to avoid conflict. I'm this type of person, even though I'm pretty direct, I would
Mhm.
like to avoid conflict at almost any point I can. And I think that's a common reason why people avoid getting clarity on situations, whether it's in relationships or even at work or just like in casual situations. Like we just do not want conflict. And a lot of times asking questions feels like creating problems and starting a conflict and the possibility of getting pushback. So that I think that's a huge reason why people avoid um, getting clarity and how it is in a sense like courageous to do so and making sure you're clear about what's going on and what people said and how people feel.
Yeah, I think so. I think, we're getting close to the end of the show. I think we have one more, Sierra. We have one more about conflict. The
Mm,
conflict means bad communication.
okay.
Not really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't necessarily think that conflict. I mean, there is maybe it's like the difference between like conflict and like a discussion, or there's probably a better word for that. It's like not every time like conflict probably has a negative connotation. Like if you're in a conflict with something, there's like there's a negative disagreement. Like I don't like what you said, you don't like what I said, versus saying like a misunderstanding. Those are two different things.
That's a better
So
word.
maybe.
Yeah, misunderstanding means bad communication. Yeah, I'm right there with you on that. Conflict
Mhm.
does, like you said, it gets a bad rap actually when it really is. It just means that a difference of opinion, right?
Yeah. And we're all allowed to have difference of opinion. I mean, if you encounter someone who agrees with every single possible opinion you had, like, hold on to them tight because you'll never see them again. Like that's it's insane.
Well, I mean, what that means is that person is not being authentic
That's
because
true.
there are no two people on earth that believe everything exactly the same. So just be careful about it. And this is what I say. I say this a lot, and you're going to hear me say this a lot. You don't know you have a friend until it's been tested.
Yes.
So if your
Yes.
friendship hasn't been tested, if you guys haven't like bumped heads a little bit and you're still friends, you don't know if you have a friend until something goes down or until you need them in a certain way. You think people are going to show up the way you want them to show up, but they don't always do that. So I would say if you haven't had any conflict,
That's true.
if you haven't bumped any heads in your relationship, you just hang in there a little longer because it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Be
Yeah,
prepared.
it's true.
Yeah, and then you have to remember what you have to remember is when you get into that conflict, is resolving that conflict important to you? Do you want
Yeah.
this person still in your life? And what I found out is I had a relationship where we had some conflict, and I realized that I felt better when I wasn't talking to him.
Yeah. Sometimes it's
It
not
was,
worth it.
that was my out. It was my out. And unfortunately, we have times where we get an out and we don't take it. And so what
Yeah.
happens is we go down that road. That's a bar right there. You go down that road. So you need to make sure that you're listening. Because people will show you. Who said that? Maya Angelou said, when people show you who they are the first time, believe them. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. So
Yes.
let me close out. I'm going to close out with a couple more. What healthy communications allow: disagreements without disrespect, tension without threatening, repair after misunderstanding. No conflict can mean people have stopped being honest. be careful about that, right? And we're going to stop it right there. And we want to thank you guys for tonight. I mean, we know tonight is Easter, Resurrection Sunday. So we know a lot of people are out to dinner, spending time with their family. So we know a lot of people couldn't necessarily be with us tonight, but we're recording it. So we're expecting you guys to see it at your convenience. So we're looking forward to your feedback on that. We'll be open to that. Next week, we have our new topic already. Next week, it's going to be how men and women process information differently. So we're all excited about that. We hope that you like it. We hope that you share, and we hope that you subscribe. And don't forget about our show, The Legends from the Past and the Future, Corner Truth Show on Mondays, and then Tuesdays. Every other Tuesday, I think we have the health and fitness. So, and then we'll be back here next Sunday, 7 p.m., same place, same time. We'll see you guys then.